it. Victor, how was that for an introduction? Or would you like me to keep going?
That was great. That was great. Thanks for the compliments. I think we have been recording, but we're just live now. So if you, it is still part of
Shall we
it.
go
But
again?
for those people that are online, you might want to scroll back a few minutes to get that part of it. But I mean, I
Okay.
assuming most of you are gonna watch this in the future, so you already seen it. But everything works smoothly now. But yeah, thanks. I definitely agree on everything you just said about why this is a good like collaboration between I and Sport Endorse. Basically, it's a smart concept when it's something you wish you had 10 years ago. And from my understanding, I don't think you mentioned that here, but that I know you guys are also working towards the whole retirement part of being an athlete and how to still contribute and how to still benefit from your life as a professional
Across
athlete.
your career. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
100%. I mean, the platform it caters for elite athletes who are, I think the platform is called competing and retired, right? So essentially, absolutely, when you're competing, the idea is you can get sponsorship via the platform, but also when you retire, your value to the sport that you were an elite athlete in remains. Not as a competitor, but maybe as a commentator or somebody who can impart wisdom to those who are then competing. Um, and they tend to be slightly different opportunities which come along. But yeah, the aim of Sport Endorse is actually to help the elite athletes really across their life cycle, and that involves life after their competitiveness in whatever sport they're in.
That's nice to know as an athlete, because those are, I mean, I think especially most professional athletes can relate to the easiest part, if you can say that, of your career is where you peak. I mean, it's the whole process of being an upcoming athlete where that's where you really need kind of the help to make it there. And then after your career, I know that a lot of people struggle with making it kind of on from being a top athlete. So that's a very comforting thing to know that you guys handle both ends of it.
Yeah, but we're certainly, again, some of our advisors. One of the guys was a three-time Olympian and a world champion in his own right. So we've listened to him quite carefully about his transition out of sport. Similarly, we have some, 16, 17-year-olds who are coming into sport. So the needs are understandably a little bit different. But broadly speaking, if you're to chuck them all in one bucket, it's financial support. Yeah. In whatever form that comes in, it can come in a cash-based form or it can come in a product or service based form. But essentially, it's more support to allow the athlete in whatever stage of their career it is to focus on what they need to.
All right. Well, before we get too far with everything, I should mention that if people are inspired by this and if you feel like you match the profile, and which if you do, you should definitely sign up for Sport Endorse. There is going to be links in the description of this video below, so everybody can go and read more, check it out, and of course download the application. Um, if you're ready for it, we could go to the questions.
Let's go.
There,
Sure. You
if
call out whatever you want. Yeah.
yeah, all right. Um, And also, if people have questions as we go along, there's been a lot of comments in the live chat already, and just most people just saying hello to both of us. So I'll say hello back to everybody from us.
Well done.
Um, but yeah, some of the questions we had prior to this, one of them is who can actually be sponsored and what level is expected to be sponsored on Sport Endorse.
Okay. So the who at the moment it would be defined as if you're an elite athlete and you're 16 years up to whenever you retire from an elite athlete or you continue to be active on the platform. That means you're visible, or you can be visible when your profile is completed, to all of the brands on the platform. And different brands look for different kind of brand ambassadors or different uses. So maybe some kind of case studies will help in different ways. Some of which are so a lot of athletes are interested in nutrition. So there are a number of nutrition brands who like the platform and who will essentially sponsor the athlete by providing them product. So there's one or two brands who I think have sponsored between 20 and 25 athletes with product only. But the theory there is it reduces your cost. You don't need to buy it, so therefore it is a financial support of a sort. Um, that ranges again in nutrition into where they could appoint you an actual brand ambassador, where there's a financial fee attached to that. That kind of arrangement, typically, depending upon the firm, will either be 3 months or a year. Um, and depending upon if you're satisfied and they're satisfied, that can potentially roll as well. Um, uh, in terms of a monetary value, the product or service tends to run anywhere from €100 up to several thousand. It really depends on what's on offer. As an example, we had laser eye surgery recently on the platform, which had a value of €4,500, which could be useful if you're a qualified candidate and your eyes actually need that kind of thing. Um, Also, there can be clothing opportunities. So depending upon if a clothing brand wants to try and sponsor you, and typically what if they're sponsoring, let's say €1,000 worth of clothes from their particular brand, they'll just look for some kind of social media activity in order to as the trade, you know. And it can build from there into longer term brand ambassador deals. Sometimes you'll get a brand which wants to retain you as an ambassador for a year. They might decide that as part of the campaign. That campaign may include TV, may include online. So it really depends upon what their want is, and valuing that then is an interesting kind of ask, right? So how do you price yourself for that as an athlete, or if you're a brand, how do you know how much that athlete should be paid? Um, Manav, who was on earlier, has done a lot of work basically around that model as to how to price. And Trevor, the other co-founder as well, has worked closely with them on it. So we're in a position where thankfully we're able to advise on that basis, and we will be building that calculation into a function on the platform early in 2022. So, I guess if the question is who can be sponsored, if you're an elite athlete and you're 16 upwards, till retirement and
Then
thereafter,
you're eligible.
you can be sponsored. And how much can you get? Anything in cash terms, anything from say €100 or maybe $150, right up to there's deals which are kind of 50, $55,000 a year, right? And occasionally more, but the range would be that, and the average is probably somewhere in the kind of the 2 or 3 thousand euro range.
I think it's also an important point to not underestimate the importance of these. She mentioned product sponsorships. If that is something you would need, nutrition products is a great example. It was one of my first sponsors as well. That if that is for athletes, because they tend to eat a lot, and especially in nutritionally correct food, if you can write that expense off and have somebody else sponsor your products that might even be better than what you would go out and buy yourself, that's a huge win financially for an athlete, because then whatever like money you have left, you can use them to fund your training. So that is for a lot of athletes, especially upcoming athletes, that's just as good as financial sponsorships. And I think my own experience is pretty much similar to what you just explained, that there is like almost any elite athlete would be able to find sponsors, and it's just a matter of how, like, the extent of that sponsorship. Because personally, I also started out with just product sponsorships and smaller companies. And that's the cool thing about the platform, that because I was very lost when I started finding sponsors. Like, should I write Nike or should I write the grocery store down the road, or the local farmers? Because it's very hit and miss, and you might not, like, how would you know if you're new to this world of sponsors and brands to work with? How would you know where exactly to hit? And the cool thing about Sport Endorse is that you're reaching all of them. So then you'll naturally end up connecting with the ones that also like see a mutual idea of working together, um, which I see as one of the biggest plus, that you have everything. I mean, you have everything on your phone, all with the chances of connecting. Just it's a whole new world compared to 10 years ago. I would, or even less, 5 years ago, I would do phone calls like, "Yo, you guys feel like sponsoring a speed skater?" And it's, what are the odds that they're like, "Oh, that's crazy. We just thought of sponsoring a speed skater." Like, there's a bigger chance of not reaching the right people. Whereas here, I mean, just the fact that you're getting exposed to all the brands will ultimately lead you to the ones that are also interested in working with you. So it's just simplifying things a lot.
I think that's a very well made point. An interesting thing as well, I think, about the platform is if a brand puts up an opportunity. I don't know. I'm holding a pen, so let's say, for example, this pen manufacturer was going to give out 100 pens, and they thought they wanted retired Irish guys like me from elite sport, although I was never an elite sport. Yeah, disclaimer: was never elite at sport. Um, but uh, and Manav is there in Mumbai. Well, he's not a retired Irish guy. He's an active Indian fella. He could still apply, and the pen manufacturer might go, well, you know what? We never thought of this category of athlete, but they might be a really good fit. So we've seen that sometimes on the platform, whereby the brand thinks that they want a tennis player, and actually they wind up thinking, a speed skater is really good. It's a little bit contrary to intuitive thinking in a way, but um, let's say you want a tennis player to show off tennis rackets, right? Well, everybody knows who the big tennis players are. But they wouldn't necessarily know that maybe one of the top speed skaters in the world, for his pastime or her pastime, might play a bit of tennis and has a great following. So by sponsoring, the speed skater, they get access to a following, like another ambassador who genuinely likes playing tennis. It's just not the primary sport. So there's lots of different ways this can actually be sliced, and how it can benefit. So, and the visibility, I think, of the platform is one of the key points. It's because when you're on it, and you've said this, Victor, you are exposed to all of those brands, and it's also not just you as an individual having to chase down those because Manav has a team work really hard at driving new brands to the platform all the time and talking about opportunities and showing them the case studies. So, as the platform grows and grows and grows, and there's a lot of change, positive change coming in 2022 to it. It's just gonna, I firmly believe it's going to become an even more beneficial tool all throughout next year for everyone.
It is. We actually just got a question coming in the comments. Do sponsors interest only elite athletes or also popular and local successful athletes? I saw Trevor. Trevor is actually in the chat as well. He tried to answer the question a little for us. But it goes a
Okay.
little along what you just said, that athletes or even brands might be surprised what they're actually looking for. That it's as much about creating value, if I understood things correctly here.
That's it. It's
So
exactly about creating
before
value.
we go on to the next question, if I can just let you both know, basis the comments, I think there are some audio difficulties. So if at the same time, if your YouTube can be put off, when you're speaking, if that can be put off, because there seems to be an echo. The live the live followers watching the program seem to be getting an echo. So if we could just look at maybe putting YouTube on mute, or just some technical difficulties is one of the comments.
Okay, I think
Gosh.
the only thing I have on at the moment is this. So hopefully,
I
yeah.
think now the YouTube's for sure off, so we should be good. Let me just see. All right.
Athlete, but locally, yeah. So I guess it depends on how you define elite athlete, and we've debated this quite a lot, and it changes based upon country. Is the answer. So, as an example, as an Irish example, there are two sports in Ireland: Gaelic football and hurling, which are largely only played in Ireland or by a scattering of Irish linked people elsewhere in the world. So, and within Ireland, there's 32 counties if you take the north and the south of Ireland, and each county has a team. So if you played on the top level team in your county in Ireland, you're considered an elite athlete. Yeah. Um, but you talk to somebody in, my wife is French, you talk to somebody in the southwest of France, they've never heard of hurling, right? So, so that probably answers the question in that if within your environment the sport that you're doing is considered, it's followed a lot, um, and you're elite in that, and to your point, Victor, there's a value add possibility for you to the brand and for the brand to you, then absolutely. I mean, how do you define sport as well? You've got a whole bunch of you think of CrossFit as an example. Is that a sport? Well, it's massively popular and it's really hard. You know, I've tried unsuccessfully, to stick at it for a while. So that absolutely anybody who's doing CrossFit who's at a top level, locally, as distinct from just internationally, welcome on the platform as well because there are brands with interest in you. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Let's see what else we got up here. Um, what exactly is the role of a sponsor? Do they have any say on your competitive career?
They should not. Yeah. So if they're looking for it, our view would be to maybe think about whether you want to work with that sponsor or not. Uh, the principle of sponsorship, as far as we're concerned, is to support and help the athlete. And yes, there is a give back, but it's not to meddle in the actual sporting career of the athlete at all. Now, you might have some exceptions, not really exceptions, but if it's a nutritional sponsor, they might want exclusivity with you. If it's Under Armour providing you with boots, or Nike are giving you running shoes, there might be a restriction that you stick to that brand. But other than that, if you're using running as an example, if I'm a marathon runner and my sponsor wants me to start running, 10Ks instead, that should never happen. Yeah, so basically, no, the sponsor shouldn't really be influencing in terms of what you do. Yeah, um, for your
That's
career.
that's also how I felt with all like every sponsor I've ever worked with. You do like obviously they have your best interest in mind as well.
Mhm.
So also, even if you look at it from like a perfectly egoistically point of view from their side, the better you do, the better it is for them. So they
Absolutely.
would never like ask you to do something that would be against your sporting career or against your development as an athlete because that's basically what they put their money into. And I think for most of my contracts, I had a point in the contract saying sponsor obligations or sponsor work must not compromise training or competition calendar of the athlete or something like that. But that is a point that has never like ever been of any use because sponsors do like they sponsor you a lot of times because they do like who you are as an athlete. I mean, they do want you to succeed as well. So that's also not like it's not nothing I ever felt compromising.
No, you're 100% right. It's a beautiful circle, virtuous circle, whereby the better the athlete does, the more exposure the athlete gets, the better it is for the sponsor, who's happy they're sponsoring, and round we go, right? So, it's that's how it should be, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. Then the only thing is that I like that we also had that in the beginning, especially with Manaf. We talked a lot about which values is it that you want to like emphasize and really highlight from a sponsor, but that is a whole different thing than them having a say in your competitive career. So that's more
Correct.
a matter of like both ends being aware of what the whole goal is here. But that's only a positive thing. I think the most restricting I ever felt from a sponsor was that they asked to use if I was using filters on Instagram, it would be these filters because that's like along their vibe kind of. That's the most compromising I ever felt, and if that's what it takes, I can live with that. So it's generally a positive thing. See the next question: are you able to have a sponsorship while working full time next to being an athlete? So I think the question is really is working with sponsors taking so much time up that you need the sponsorship income to be so big that you can quit your full time job? And I kind of know the answer, but I'll let you go with that.
The answer is no. Yeah, you can absolutely work a full time job and have a sponsor. Again, the if you think about what you do as an athlete, no matter what the sport, you're most visible when you're competing. So, and that's where the attachment of the sponsor to you adds a certain amount of value to the sponsor, as well as, I guess, the day to day. But it shouldn't really ever conflict with what happens in that day to day. In the same way, it shouldn't get in the way of your training schedule or your competing schedule. For no particular reason, it needs to get in the way of if you have a full time job. If they want you to show up for a photo shoot for a day, um, that might need you to take a day off work, but as a holiday. But it will be planned in advance in exactly the same way as if even if you weren't working, but you were competing and training to fit around that. So, no, I don't think there's any issue there at all. There shouldn't be. And again,
Yeah.
if the sponsor's pushing for that, you start asking questions. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the main idea of getting sponsors and becoming a professional athlete is that whatever you get from a sponsor, it the whole purpose is that it allows you to spend more time in your sport. So the idea is that it'll just give you more time. That's the whole definition of being a full time athlete. That you gain that time to put it into your athletic career. Um, so whatever a sponsor might require from you, it's very likely to be a lot less than the time you would have had to put in your usual work.
Yeah, sure. I mean, like just as an example of that, there was somebody who did a once-off kind of appearance here in Ireland recently, um, and they made a little bit over €3,000 for it, which was essentially 2 hours work. Right? So that's not a bad rate. If I could
No,
get
no,
that all the
it's
time, I'd be very happy.
otherwise you have a really nice job to begin with. So maybe just stick
Yeah.
with that. That's a good point. Um, oh, this is a good question. What can you do to be more attractive to companies? Can you give any good tips on how to get first in line when the brands are out looking for athletes?
Yeah, at the moment, I'll talk first in terms of the platform. Make sure you've got a really good profile. So if there's video footage of you, upload it. If it's on YouTube, if it's not, just upload it. You can upload video directly. Uh, Make sure your the bio bit tells a story about yourself, not just factual. I was my personal best in pen tossing is 10 every minute. Um, tell the story around it, why you got into pen tossing, etc., etc. Okay, it's a bad example. I'll drop the pen tossing, but that principle basically of just telling that story around yourself and in the services, put in your likes and dislikes as well. So, I had an interesting conversation with a coffee brand who said, right, so you've uh, over 1,000 athletes on the platform. How do I know which ones like coffee? Um, and I was like, yeah, good question. Yeah. So, well, actually, as it happens, I opened up the platform and I typed in coffee in the search bar, and 2 athletes came up. Right. So straight away, they're differentiating themselves versus everybody else by putting in some of their likes. Yeah. Equally, if you have dislikes, you can put a don't like or no. So, for example, tobacco. If you didn't ever want to be sponsored by a tobacco company, you just put no tobacco. Yeah. Um, and that helps kind of broaden you or narrow you based upon your own wants, yeah, and likes and dislikes. And that's a certain amount of that is about knowing what your personal brand is. I mean, Victor talked about this earlier about the values of your sponsor and your own values. The more they match and align, the more successful the sponsorship is going to be, and the more likely it's going to roll over. We've seen that, so we've data. It's not just my view to support that. Um, it also means that you're going to be happier doing it. So if
Yeah,
it's
it
a
feels
photo
better
shoot
promoting something you really enjoy
yeah,
and like you
yeah,
can stand up for sure.
exactly, that you really like. Yeah.
So to sum up, there's like
So
two main things you would really want to. You would want to figure out what you actually enjoy and what makes you special, stand out compared to other athletes, and then trying to like get that through in your channel or get that through in your profile on Sport Endorse. And then just make a good profile. Think of it like a dating profile almost. You want to show your best sides. If you have video material, if you have good photos, or just anything that makes you stand out a little in a good way.
absolutely. And on the video material, it can be if there's clips of you competing, great. If there's clips of you talking to media, great. If there's clips of you talking down the local school, uh, whatever it is, that shows you. Yeah. So it's not just you competing, but you being you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, Preferably not, drinking your 15th beer on a Friday night, though. Not that kind of stuff.
that's true. With moderation, you. But no, it's a really smart. It's a great example with the coffee. Like, let's say you have Cristiano Ronaldo, but he's known for hating coffee, and then you have a second division soccer player. You would still want the soccer player if you have a coffee brand, obviously, if he is into coffee, of course. So that goes to show
Yeah,
that
because he's
your interest can overrule your current level as an athlete.
yeah, no, no, absolutely. Because it's again, Trevor was chatting to an Irish rugby player at one point and discovered he really liked bees. So there's actually a company that produces honey in Ireland. You know, now I mean that would never have happened,
No.
yeah, unless there was a conversation there, etc. But so it's kind of like it doesn't necessarily you put in what your likes are and everything in there because it's all searchable for the brands. Um, I think that really helps.
Yeah, figuring out why you can be the one they're looking for, and then make sure to get it out there on the platform.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we have one final question. I don't actually know the answer to this one, so it's great we have you on board. Sport Endorse, in which countries? Let's see. In which countries would like is Sport Endorse active? And specific question, what about South America? But I think just in general, it would be interesting to viewers to hear which regions that Sport Indoors actively works in right now, and then I know you're kind of expanding already. So tell us a bit about that.
Yeah. Okay. So we started in Ireland, so we're incredibly strong in Ireland. Tiny population, tiny market. We're not bad in the UK. We actually have started to get a reasonable foothold in the USA, and we're going to expand heavily into the USA in 2022. But essentially, we're global. Like on the platform, we have athletes from I don't remember the number of countries, but it's north of 70 countries already. Yeah.
That's a lot.
Specific to South America, um, what's interesting is Manav has somebody joining his team this week who's actually living in Brazil at the moment, right? So we'll have a team member in Brazil as of the end of this week. So uh, and I guess what happens is the process of when a new athlete joins, uh, they get their profile up, etc. And one of these, so Manav's team is expanding quite rapidly, and one of the people on his team, part of their job is going to be to reach out and to understand what brands it is that you like as an athlete, yeah, um, and who are relevant to you. So I can list 10 Irish nutrition companies and 50 UK nutrition companies, but there might be one in Brazil, to use Brazil as the continuing example, which I don't know about. But that doesn't mean we can't reach out to them. Yeah. So we can reach out to them and get them on the platform. So that's another brand on the platform. And you know what? Oh my God, we've only got 15 athletes in Brazil at the moment. That's a blind guess. I don't know. Yeah. So there could be an early adopter's benefit um, to the athlete. Yeah. So we will continue to grow. We grow daily, basically. So we're going to continue to grow and grow and grow and grow. And every time we get more athletes from a particular country, clearly it's worth more effort on our behalf to make sure we're satisfying those athletes and therefore getting brands on board there. It's vice versa. We need both. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no point in having a million athletes and no brands or a million brands and no athletes. We need everybody to be able to be in a nice meeting place, basically.
Also important to remember for those people that are like wondering if am I outside the area where Sport Indoors works, that most of the brands are so international by now. I mean, there's majority of all brands will work outside the country of their origin or wherever they're based. Um, so I'm pretty sure that almost no matter where you're at right now watching this, you would be able to create a profile here, and there would be brands that were willing to work in your specific region. And if not, like you said, there will be. And
Yeah, but there's also
is
there's
it
also
correct? Is there already more
sorry, go
than
on.
there's more than 250 brands right now connected to the platform.
Yep, yeah, and growing. And one of the things as well is like the internal team of Sport Endorse, if I can call it that. We've all lived in many different places. So I spent 11 years in Japan. So if we need Japanese brands or companies who are based in Japan, I have a lot of contacts over there still. Yeah. Manav has lived in Australia, right? Trevor has lived in America and around the place. Miriam's lived around the place. So there's lots of Alex is in Ottawa at the moment, right? So, but our dev team is in the Ukraine. So even just as a small group of people, we have a reasonable kind of reach. Yeah. And that grows all the time, particularly when you bring digital marketing and books and that into play.
It's a very international Irish company. It sounds like.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like a benefit of being Irish is we're such a small country with such an open economy, and we also have a history of leaving the country. So like, my parents left, my siblings left, I
Send the
left.
jeans.
So we all leave at some point, right? So if we can't have that kind of an open mind, it would be a very sad reflection on us as a people.
Yeah, being Danish, I can relate to that. I mean, if I was to get all my ice skating, inline skating material from Danish companies, I would not be competitive today. So I know that there's many ways to connect with international brands and work it from there. And maybe in a way, it's a benefit of smaller countries that we are naturally kind of forced to reach out in more regions to make it more international. That's kind of
I think that's an interesting idea. Quite possibly, yeah. So that means you have to work harder, theoretically. I don't know. I have to be careful what I say here. I don't want to offend anybody. Like, um, yeah. But yeah, no. I mean, it's look, everybody works really hard at their sport, clearly. And I mean, I guess if you're one of the lucky few where sponsorship comes easily to you, then celebrate that and concentrate on your sport. But for the majority, that doesn't happen. And that's why Sport Endorse exists.
yeah. Oh, that was a good ending. If that was I think that was all the questions I had for now. I don't know if you have anything more to say to our viewers.
Well, only that, we're very welcoming, honestly. So, and we're happy to have questions. So the best, like, if you want to, you can contact us via any of the social media channels we're on, or you can hello@sportendorse.com is an email address, which comes to the whole team. So one of us will pick it up um, and come back to you. We're happy to answer questions. So, and I guess the last thing I'd say on questions is, in my view, there is no such thing as a bad question. So you just keep going with the questions. There's no issue at all. And if you ask and you forget, that's okay. You can ask again. Yeah. Um. So
And I have
that's it.
a final thing I want everybody to know because we haven't spoken of that. That it is free. Like it's free to create a profile on Sport Endorse. There's no upfront payment or anything, and then it's just a commission, which is actually lower than what most agents charge. So if that's what you're holding back or what's holding you back, then don't fear that. That's a really nice feature that is just free to go on there and create your profile.
Yeah. And again, if you consider why we did it to help athletes, if it's not going to help them on all levels, then we're not being true to our brand values, which we take very seriously. But and I guess in closing, from my perspective, I just want to say we're delighted to be working with Victor, and we're going to wish him all the very best in his upcoming competition.
Thanks a lot.
If we could be in there behind pushing you, we would be, but that would be a lot.
I appreciate that. No, and yeah, thanks for the support already. That means a lot, and yeah, hopefully I'll be able to feel that during the last laps of my races these coming weekends. That'll yeah. So to follow me, you can probably see my Instagram. I'm gonna update from the races, the competitions, leading up and during the Olympics, and then for Sport Endorse, there's gonna be a link below, and when this video is uploaded, you can also still comment, and then we'll try and figure out a good way to respond to that in the comments later on. And that was all for now. thanks for being on board on this, and thanks everybody for joining in and watching this.
Cool.
I will
That
find
was very good.